What have I seen happening around the countryside? Well, it's been a little bit quieter than normal, but these are a couple of the key themes just to get you going. Millennials always saying that it's so hard to buy today versus the older generation. Is it true? How does it play out? What do the facts and figures say? Auction clearance rates, I'll go through it in a moment, but what do we expect? What can we see going forward this year? There's an amendment to reverse mortgages. Maybe it's relevant to you, unless you're a retiree, it may or may not be. Summer property strategies. So what can you be doing over this break to get the most value and maximise where you are? And then lastly, escaping the big smoke doesn't come cheap. And that's really just because we're in holiday season and a bit of fun. You might want to talk about how much you're paying for your holiday place. It's probably not that relevant to you on that home buying journey, but that was really just because it is the end of the year. Happy to have a bit of a laugh and a bit of fun in this last session. Okay, before we have too much fun, let's talk about the weekend's auction results. So overall, total national clearance rate was 63.4%. So obviously well down from the 80s that we were seeing, a month or so ago. But just keep in mind, there was 4,756 homes all went to auction. Last week was a record with just under 5,000. This is the second busiest week nationally since the record started about 15 or so years ago. So notwithstanding how many properties actually were taken to auction, to actually see these kind of clearance rates, so 60% in Sydney, 62% in Melbourne, 69 in Brisbane, 70 in Adelaide, 50 in Perth, and 73 in Canberra. To see those kind of results, obviously the key markets being Sydney had 1,600 auctions and Melbourne 2,140. That is a massive number of properties going to auction for that week. Typically, if we see 1,000 properties in one of the capital cities, that's what we call a Super Saturday, and that's a big week in its own right. So to be seeing 2,000 and 1,600, so just between Sydney and Melbourne, seeing almost 4,000 properties there in their own right, really sort of shows how strong in terms of the number of listings that were there. So seeing these clearance rates means that we're actually still getting a big number. So in Melbourne, there was 1,107 properties sold at auction. Now, remember how I said if we had more than 1,000 properties going to auction, that would be a big weekend. So I just caution those of you who think that perhaps with these lower clearance rates, that prices are on their way down and the market's really turned. Just remember, I think this is more a factor of the surge in listings that we've seen and hence the number of auctions going on at the moment, rather than it specifically being something to do with the market turning. However, that doesn't mean that things aren't abreast and going through. I just caution you to read too much into it. As I said, make sure you turn this information into key knowledge for you, depending on whether you're a seller and a buyer. Lastly, I've gone through this a number of the last couple of weeks. This obviously gets published by realestate.com once a month. So I'll just quickly rush through this for those of you that haven't been here before. If you do want to see my more detailed discussion about this, jump onto YouTube and see, go back a couple of weeks ago session and watch it. So what is this? This is the total count of sold properties week by week, and it's compiled by realestate.com. So it's obviously based on the data they have at hand. So don't worry too much in terms of, is it the exact number? Is it correct or not? You're really looking for the pattern and the trends. Now, why I say this is important is the red line is 2021, the blue line is last year, and the grey line is 2019. So you can see consistently throughout the year, we have had more sold properties every single week than we did last year, not too surprising, and even than we had in 2019. So the reason why this is important for you, why do you need to focus on this? Well, this shows you that despite everything, the lockdowns, whatever else has happened during this year that perhaps might have changed things, we're still seeing record numbers of transactions going through. So these record prices that we're seeing are backed up by very, very strong data in terms of the number of transactions that are going through. Unsurprisingly, you can see we're up 40% on terms of the number of sales that occurred this year compared to 2020. And Victoria, obviously the biggest change with 57%, and New South Wales with 33%, and the rest pretty strong as well. So obviously we're seeing a lot of sales go through this year, which is really supporting those record prices that we've been seeing. Okay, That's it for the information.